Howdy. Probably should open my computer so you know the agenda is. Okay, thank you. I'll see. Roger George.
Well,
How are you?
good.
You're not in trouble. What'd I do?
Yeah.
I looked at you in your face.
Like, okay, what's up here? You know,
What do you want?
are you one of those guys that put like, the note on my back and something?
Pick me.
What he meant to say is you're not in trouble here, right now.
Exactly.
Oh.
Alrighty, I think we have a critical mass here, so I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:01 and ask for a roll call, please.
Sand City,
Here.
County of Monterey,
Here.
Seaside, Marina Coast,
Here.
Delray Oaks,
Here.
Salinas,
I am here.
Pacific Grove, Castroville,
Here.
Veranda,
Here.
Monterey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Beautiful. And with that, I'll ask Alexis to kick us off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir.
You.
And with that, ask for additions to the agenda.
No additions.
All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to the next item. 5 is approval of agenda.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board and ask for, we'll call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move on to item number 6. This is for public comments, items that are not on this evening's agenda. Folks on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function, and I'll just check in the chamber real quick. Anybody here want to speak during general public comment?
Yes.
Please.
Well, hi. Thank you for letting me speak. My name's Emily Paz. I live in the city of Salinas. And I'm here because I'm rather annoyed and disappointed with the treatment that I've gotten from Monterey One. I am a senior on a very limited income, and so keeping current with my bills has not been easy. So I made a call a couple of months ago because I happened to have the opportunity to pay my bill in full. However, there are these late penalty fees, which I consider gouging. I consider them outrageous. You know, mine's at $32. I don't know how you guys were able to get that because all other companies, they don't charge as much. But I was seeing if I could get those removed so that I could just pay the bill in full. Otherwise, you know, just no way I can catch up. So I made a call to the office, and of course they said they could only do 1 month. And well, that's nothing compared to the size of my bill. So I said, well, can I speak to maybe the director of finance, which was Lawrence Chu? Didn't return my call. And then I went to speak, left a message with Paul Scudo. Is that how you say his name? I still did not get a return call. And, you know, if I take the time and energy to place a call, I do expect a certain level of professionalism and a return call. But that wasn't done. So I'm not sure how I can get my bill resolved. I mean, I do know there is a low income, but that's not going to help me, you know, with my bill in full. It's just going to continue to increase until I'm able, I don't know what I can do because like I said, I'm on a limited income. And so that's what I just had to mention, that something needs to be done where I should be able to speak to somebody about being able to take care of my bill in full and see if something can be worked out with just removing the penalty phase. I know most other companies will do that if you're going to pay in full. So that's what I came to say. So thank you for your time.
Ma'am, apologies for any miscommunication there on our agency's behalf. And Lawrence and Paul are right here. So if you want to connect with them on the side to exchange some contact information before you leave today, we'll make sure to follow up with you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Anybody on Zoom wish to speak for general public comments for items that are not on today's agenda? All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comments. Move on to item number 7, special acknowledgements. Item A is proclamation recognizing Stormwater Awareness Week, September 22nd through the 26th of 2025. And with that, I'll pass it to Rachel for a staff presentation.
Great. Thank you, Chair Williamson. Good evening, everyone. So as the chair mentioned, our next item takes us to the world of stormwater. So Monterey One Water is the program administrator for the Monterey Regional Stormwater Management Program. You may hear us call it Mr. Swimp. The program includes a collection of coastal cities along with the county who hold what is called an MS4 stormwater permit. Together, these entities coordinate regional activities to satisfy permit requirements like water quality monitoring and public education and outreach. Each year, our industry celebrates this dedication to our waterways with Stormwater Awareness Week. This statewide effort helps educate community members, civic leaders, and municipal staff on stormwater runoff, which in the program area flows directly to the Monterey Bay without treatment. So I hope you will join me in proclaiming the importance of stormwater management through recognition of the 14th annual Stormwater Awareness Week.
All right. And with that, as chair of the board, I hereby proclaim September 22nd through the 26th of September Stormwater Week. So let's give it up for M1W for celebrating this momentous moment.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Gil,
Pictures, anybody? No, I'm just kidding.
through the chair,
Please.
do we need a motion to approve the proclamation as written?
Nope, I don't think we do.
If we do, I'm happy
Oh,
to make
no,
it.
actually, yes, we do.
So I'll move approval of the proclamation as written.
Second.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Thank you. Anybody else have comments on this one?
Need a second.
We have a second. Oh, okay.
Didn't hear it.
No, you're no good. You're good. All right. With that, we'll go ahead and take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? I am not seeing any takers. So I'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to the board. Any last minute comments? All right. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for that. And thank you, Rachel and team, for all the efforts in putting this together for us. All right, with that, we'll go on to item 8, presentations. 8A is presentation on Department of Water Resource Facilitation Support Services, assessment for the Castroville Intrusion Project, also known as CSIP, by Dave Sepos. And
So, Tyler, I'll just do a brief introduction.
perfect. Well,
So we've been working with Dave for quite some time. He is working with the Salinas Valley Basin GSA, and there was some DWR money that allowed him to expand some of his services, where he interviewed a number of our board members and staff, as well as Water Resources Agency board members and staff, just to try to get a better understanding on how we can work better together. What are some of those barriers that we're seeing? What are ways that we can communicate better? So with that, Dave has already done this presentation in front of the Board of Supervisors, as well as the Monterey County Water Resources Agency Board. And this is just our turn to hear about the outcome and some thoughts moving forward. In addition, after that, I think R and I are going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing collectively between the two entities, and if we can address anything that Dave says, we can do it at that point. So, Dave, are you all good to go?
I am here. Che, okay, looks like Che is starting the presentation, and I don't know if I'm on video or not, which is fine, but I will continue through this and perhaps be a disembodied voice or perhaps not. So yes, good evening. If you can go to the first slide, the prior slide, Che, that would be great. Thank you. To just expand a little bit on what Paul just spoke about. Yes, by way of background, I have met with some of you, obviously, and I'll get to that in a minute. And just a little further on background, some of you may know me from the work that I do with the Salinas Valley Basin GSA in the context of demand management and other Sigma-related facilitation and conflict resolution efforts. Another part of my work is in organizational development and governance, and so that's where this really falls into that category more so than some of the other realms in which some of you may know me. To reiterate what Paul likewise said, the history on this is that going back to the prior general manager of the GSA, there was a sense while Donna was still there and within that board that as goes CSIP, goes potential impacts to the GSA. And at that time, which from a chronological perspective was prior to the audit, which I'll speak about a bit more as well, that there may be benefit to capitalize on some of these facilitation support services dollars that Paul spoke of. That way that works is a GSA makes an application to DWR. There is no money that actually changes hand. It's essentially services that are provided. We started work a little bit early on, and then circumstances regarding the audit took place, and so we put this effort on hold. So I say that in part to just also make it very clear right from the outset that what I'm going to be reporting on is from interviews that were done, work that was done in the latter part of last year and in through the earlier part of this year. And a lot has changed since then. There's been a significant amount of work that's been done between M1 Water and the WRA. So there is a little bit of a snapshot on time element to what I'm going to be covering, and I want that really clear about that because I know that there's been tremendous work that's been done. There are also factors that I'll be talking about that perhaps are not quite yet being capitalized on, or just early conversations being capitalized on as an outcome of the audit. So there is hopefully some benefit in that regard. Next slide, please. So I'm going to be covering the process that I took of findings, analysis, and considerations. Findings is really the raw data. This is the data that I heard from the conversations that I'll talk about in just a second. Analysis and considerations is where I employ my best professional judgment for your consideration. Next slide, please. So as Paul noted, and as I've just reiterated, this was based upon interviews that were conducted between December last year, February of this year. It was a fairly large assessment. That's the term that we use in my line of work. 30 different people were interviewed. 16 different staff, including staff executive leadership, were interviewed in 3 separate interviews. Those interviews included both conversations with all staff, including leadership present, and then I asked for leadership to step aside and allow me to speak just with staff. And then working with the directors of the respective agencies, it was decided that it would be beneficial for me to also speak to directors. Those general managers gave recommendations, 5 individuals each, for whom I would interview. 14 ultimately were interviewed, and as noted, 1 party was unable to participate due to illness that was taking place. I used a standard set of questions. The questions changed a little bit in terms of standard ones that I would ask the staff versus ones that I posed to the directors. All conversations were confidential, and there's not any attribution that takes place in work like this. I will also say, similar to my presentations to WRA and the board, and I have also done this presentation to the GSA's board, that for a case of this complexity, I would ordinarily, frankly, present in a more of a report setting, but under the contracting structure through DWR, they prefer that it be done through a PowerPoint level. So you're getting PowerPoint, and I'll be providing color commentary to some of the complexity issues that are here. One other thing I would say is that as shown in these interviews, there were no public that were interviewed. It was just staff leadership, and the directors. So when there are places in the subsequent slides where I speak about the public, this is as the perception of staff and or directors, their perception of how the public is assessing the respective agencies or CSIP writ large. Again, I did not go out and interview the public. That would have been a significantly larger effort. Next slide, please. So these findings are presented not in a statistical way, but rather sort of a qualitative way. My job is to take the data that's provided to me and distill from that where key themes and trends are emerging from the conversations. So I'm going to have a series around 6 or 7 slides here regarding assessment findings, and then move on to the analysis. Starting with this, again, using the standard questions, I've combined this all under the sense of where M1 Water and WRA sees their roles and responsibilities on CSIP. And they generally understand their roles, both staff and directors. However, there are some differing perspectives. And in particular, there are key distinctions with how the respective agencies view themselves or how they think they are thought of when a challenge occurs. Each agency, frankly, seems to think that when a major challenge occurs, it's operational in nature. The general public seems to go to them, not the other guys, so to speak. There is definitely a difference of perspective about who the CSIP customers are, the sort of who are the beneficiaries. Are they more localized to the 12,000 acres of the CSIP footprint? Are they much more broad to the valley? Does it include the peninsula? Very differing perspectives there. And then certainly concerns were raised, as perhaps not surprising, particularly in the context of the audit, about funding methods and funding acquisition, and related to this idea of CSIP customer, where a respective agency's allegiances are. Basically, who does a particular agency have an allegiance toward as a beneficiary / constituent? Next slide, please. Again, regarding GSA roles and reliance on CSIP. So again, going back to when this project originated, there was this question of, what is that nexus point for the GSA? And there are some fairly diverse perspectives. The 5 bullets that are here, I would say that the first bullet does not represent a majority by any means, but some parties that I spoke to did say they, questioned why the GSA really is even involving itself in CSIP, and that the GSA should really have no role. More common, however, were the remaining bullets that the GSA does have a nexus, and/or the GSA could play a key role in issues such as public awareness, fostering more comprehensive regional dialogue, things like that. Next slide, please. Regarding organizational relationships, there's shared concerns between, again, directors and staff. Similar to my first slide, there appear to be few common goals and a lot of divergent motives. Very, very infrequently in my interviews did the parties speak in terms of collective goals. They were very driven by an agency-centric perspective, and at times noted really divergent motives of why a particular agency does certain things and the work that they do. Related to that, and as noted here, there was a definite sense of competition rather than partnership between, in particular, WRA and M1 Water with regards to conditions of CSIP, how CSIP is managed, things like that. Again, the GSA does create a unfunded mandate for the WRA. That's neither good nor bad, but it did come up that as the GSA seeks information or needs to get certain data gaps filled, that puts a burden on an already burdened staff at the WRA. Less so is that experienced by M1 Water, more so by WRA. And then lastly, regarding organizational relationships, an area where there was quite across the board agreement, but also a concern, is that past historic relationships were more effective when there were people within the respective agencies who had been in their positions for a while, knew each other, knew how to work together, and it basically created that level of comfort and relationship between each other, regardless of which agency they represented. That sort of continuity and institutional knowledge that seems to have slipped away. Many people spoke about it slipping away as inherent staff turnover takes place. Next slide, please. Regarding functionality of CSIP writ large, very, very common perspectives and concerns were raised that there is extensive deferred maintenance that is troubling and could become a problem in the near future. That there are minimized financial investments that are made into CSIP to a level that would really cover deferred maintenance, let alone expanded O&M, and that the annual costs are challenging, as was evident in the audit. And obviously, this is certainly one topic that's been discussed in the audit and in between the work of the leadership team between the agencies that's working on the audit outcomes. Next slide. I'm now going to move on to some a little more in-depth regarding current and future CSIP challenges, and that's defined under three categories: operational, finance, or funding, and governance. So staff and directors have got shared perspectives, but differing causes or different views on the causes. There's a general sense that the operations are not managed effectively, but again, this is cross-agency, so there's a certain amount of whose responsibility is it, and perhaps not, to be quite honest, a level of self-awareness, but rather a sense of what is the role of the other parties in terms of these challenges. But again, there is a lack of shared organizational value and mission. I'm going to speak to that a bit more in a minute. Again, this idea of who is served and why, that context of who the constituents are, who the beneficiaries are, where the allegiances are, this came up again. Certainly a lack of effective communication, whether that's tied to that sense of institutional consistency or just how the staff and agencies writ large just work with each other, as well as broader external communication in an outreach context. I don't think that next slide is going to surprise anybody, again, due to the audit. And then likewise, and related to some of the other things I've said, this concept of staff silos rather than a bridging between multiple agencies dealing with this shared facility and service that they have nonetheless. Next slide, please. Again, regarding challenges, but this time financial. Likewise, shared perspectives, but in this case, there's differing causes or different views on causes. So whereas on the prior slide, there was pretty shared views on causes and solutions, here we had differing perspectives. There are a number of parties that believe that on one hand, there are unrealistic expectations about what the costs are, that the cost of doing business and maintaining CSIP when set against the backdrop of a changing economy and increasing inflation and things like that, that there are challenges to stay in the black, as there are with many other factors of, government agency delivery of services in a wide range. There's also this uncertainty and this kind of unresolvable dynamic regarding how funds are acquired, where M1 Water gets its funds versus how WRA gets its funds, how GSA gets its funds. And this fosters distrust, and related then to that, unfortunately, there is a perspective being raised, and again, by staff and the directors themselves, that there's a perception internally and a belief that the public believes that there are conflicts of interest with how financial decisions are made and where monies are spent. Next slide, please. Last of these three slides, again, under challenges, is governance. And again, shared perspectives and generally common views on the causes. This conflict of interest issue regarding governance raised its head again. It is a somewhat dichotomous situation in that many of the parties spoken with noted that, look, particularly at the director level, we are elected to represent our respective communities. There is an inherent level of representative. That is the point of representative democracy. The flip side to that is the concept or the sense of conflict of interest is damaging. It is damaging to the public perception and confidence of the constituents and beneficiaries. Next slide, please. Again, the perception of public opinion about CSIP, there's a strong concern about how CSIP is prioritized. Again, this concept of whose water is it? Who are the beneficiaries? Who is supposed to be getting this water? A very common concept that was raised was that there seems to be no cohesive regional vision. There are a number, as I know all of you already know, there are a number of water-related entities in the Salinas Valley and the peninsula. However, there is a across-the-board sense that there's really a lack of a regional vision, and therefore that exacerbates that sense of competition and the sense of who is being served. As noted a little bit earlier, but was reiterated in some of these questions, each of these agencies, particularly M1 Water and WRA, not so much the GSA, they sort of think of themselves as the go-to for problem solving, and neither really perceives necessarily the other agency as being as trusted, if you will, as the party with whom I may have been speaking to. So this is an interesting dynamic where all these parties sort of felt this way, but they sort of spoke that way about, again, the other guys. And then lastly, there was a very much sense that while there are very strong opinions about CSIP, those opinions are held by a small number of parties who really live and breathe CSIP on a more regular basis, but that rather there is, in a broader context of constituency, there's a rather limited public awareness and a rather limited cohesive outreach regarding CSIP. Next slide, please. So now we're going to move on to the analysis. And again, this is where we're shifting from a qualitative analysis from what I was told to my best professional judgment, which I offered for your consideration. The work that's going on right now and has been going on to the current agreement or the historic agreement, clearly very important. The outcome of the work from the audit, clearly very important. It's been challenging for all the agencies. That's very clear. The work that your general manager and WRA's general manager have been doing is clearly evident to be beneficial, and they are working very closely together. And I think that's been shown in many ways. The agencies have, and this, I say this because this is a very consistent thing that I deal with when I'm dealing with regional governance and again, this sort of organizational development context of my professional work. These agencies have inevitable and appropriate differences. They're not the same agency. They don't have the same missions or values or funding or methods, and they're not faults. These are not the blame of any particular agency. This is sort of the white noise that inevitably happens when you have regional resource management by multiple agencies. It's the reconciliation of those conditions where the challenge comes in. Next slide, please. CSIP seems very clearly, in my professional opinion, and even amongst the parties spoken to, that it is a shared responsibility. It is very clear that there is a dependence that these agencies, again, particularly WRA and M1 Water, have, but the agencies and the staff do not speak in those terms. And again, very exceptionally rare were the times in these interviews, both with staff and directors, that conversation turned towards people speaking in a shared decision space or a shared governance, even though it's understood that there in fact is a shared role, but they just didn't speak that way. And that's concerning when you have that sort of, again, another version of a dichotomy. Again, my professional judgment is that in a context like this, where you have an interdependencies that exist and a delivery that is requiring work between two or more agencies in a regional context, it is completely feasible for sovereign entities to coexist and maintain the work that they need to do while still having some shared decision space and governance. It is evident in joint powers agreements. That is an example of that, and there are multiple other examples. So it isn't an either or. You can protect the sovereignty of an organization and still find shared decision space to do the interdependent work that needs to be done. I will say, however, that given the inherent challenges of too much work and not enough time and not enough resources and always sort of dealing with the wolf at the door, my professional experience, and in particular with CSIP, based on what I've heard, a shared decision space conversation is not going to happen organically. It's just not going to materialize. It's got to come from a proactive, focused, mutual initiative that the entities agree that they're going to focus on for a while to create, if they wanted to do that. Next slide, please. There is mutual benefit, in my professional opinion, to all the reasons spoken about regarding a relatively small subset of parties that know about CSIP and have broad questions, but a much broader community of people who don't really understand the role and benefits in many cases that CSIP plays up and down the valley and out to the peninsula. So having a more effective public awareness and understanding would be quite beneficial in my professional opinion. There are, getting to this point of institutional knowledge and consistency, there really are no existing structural methods for succession planning. So you have staff that leave, they're entitled to do so. You have new staff that are hired. They have their allegiances to their new bosses and to their new colleagues. But there didn't seem to be, in this context of interdependence, any kind of proactive system where Party X is told, okay, this is now your responsibility. And one of those is to go get to know Party Y at the other agency and build a relationship and understand what they know and cross-pollinate, so to speak. And again, likewise, that's likely not going to happen on the organic, except over a lengthy period of time, whereas building some formal succession planning could probably expedite that beneficially. And again, lastly, this lack of a succession plan where people come in, they go into their silos, they go to the bosses that they now have. There's less of that cross-pollination. That's inherently going to exacerbate that us and them dynamic. And that's not a fault. That's not wrong. That's just human behavior. Next slide, please. So with that, this is my last slide and the considerations that are brought forward for your consideration and the other agencies that have been mentioned. There would be benefit for these three at a bare minimum agencies to create a shared CSIP governance structure, one that, again, does not inhibit or threaten the sovereignty and the mission and the values of the respective entities, but find that decision space, if you think in terms of a Venn diagram, where there is a more focused effort for interdependent governance and management to break down some of these silos and get past this kind of competitive nature that's been spoken about. Likewise, and as noted, there would be benefit for the agencies to consider proactively creating a staff succession approach. So when turnover happens, which is inevitable, that those staff have a helping hand and are not only helped along the way within their agency, but to build those relationships with people across the border, if you will, to help collectively do the work. And then lastly, because resource allocation is different and resource development is different, but there would be benefit, create a mutual and execute a mutual CSIP outreach plan that is then implemented by the respective agencies to the extent that their resources allow, but to do that again under a common effort and approach. So that concludes my presentation. With that, I will field any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sipos, for the presentation. I'll open it up to the board for any questions. Please.
Yeah, I just had a few questions and a couple of comments too. First off, Dave, thank you for your presentation. This is great stuff. I know as a leader, I've always found this type of assessment very valuable, much better than a survey because it gives you that ground level type of assessment. My question is, do you feel as though the folks that you spoke with were speaking candidly, where they felt that it was going to be non-attributable and you got really a good response from the folks that you spoke with?
I do. It's a very fascinating thing in my line of work. Quite frankly, most times, and this is one of those examples for at least some of these folks, I arrive sight unseen or, people don't know me and I, say, hi, I'm a neutral, trust me. and people have to do that or not. And yet there is, whether it's a cathartic nature or some other reason, people do tend to do that. So yes. And if I felt, I'll be very candid with you, if I felt that people were speaking in a guarded manner, I would tell you otherwise, but I go to very great lengths to make clear that there's no attribution. I follow through on that. And, the tone and tenor of the conversations was consistently quite candid and open and very enlightening. So yes, sir, I really do.
Yeah, that makes it even better. I'll tell you, it's taken a while for me, over the last few years being involved with this board and just in city government. I've seen some of the things that you talked about, the lack of collective goals, which has really led to a lack of teamwork. I see that, which then further creates conflict of interest, distrust, lack of cohesiveness. So a lot of the things that you talked about, maybe a few years ago, I couldn't really see that because I didn't have the experience that I have now, but I can completely understand what you were saying or the feedback that the folks you spoke with gave you. I guess my question is, in terms of an organization as M1W, what's now our path forward? What's going to be the requirement where we can address and, reconciliate some of the issues that were brought forward?
Well, I think that Paul and our, excuse me, are going to speak to that a bit in terms of work that's ongoing. I think that they're maybe some further work that the respective general managers and ultimately, I suppose, the boards would potentially take based upon staff guidance and direction. So again, like I noted at the outset, this reflects a little bit of a snapshot in time. But again, there is some work that's starting, and I say this in the context of my recommendations or considerations, not that I'm right, to be quite a blunt, but there could be other work to be done, perhaps, but that is to be developed. And I would like to say, just again to the points you made, and for you as a board, and I mean this really deeply, sincerely, the dynamics that I describe here are not false. They are the inherent things that occur when you've got different agencies all doing the hard work that they do. This is quite common. It's nothing new. It's just the nature of the beast. It's identifying it and then doing something about it where the challenge is. But I don't want any of you in this board or other boards to think that this is sort of an untenable problem. It's just the inherent nature of regional governance and management.
Yeah, and that's what I got from it as well, Dave. So, I mean, as you went through your presentation, I mean, I completely understand exactly what you just said. But thanks again. Really appreciate it.
You bet.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything on here either. And I think you kind of touched on at the end of this being the inherent nature, and that's, the problem. I mean, there was a time when the GSA was being formed, there was some discussion about rapid in its mandate into the Water Resources Agency. But back at that time in 2016, 17, there had been some problems with the Water Resources Agency, and there wasn't a lot of trust in going forth with at that point. So what you have here, and it's not just these three entities. There's other water entities in this county, and yet, there's with every entity, there's a different perspective on whatever the program is, and with CSIP, what we're talking about here, but it goes on a bigger issue of just not having a unified policy within the whole county. And I can see it pretty clear, as I'm the only person from these three agencies, Water Resources, M1W, and the GSA, that actually sits on all three boards. And I can see those differences. I can see the butting of heads of within just the agencies themselves, much less between agencies. And there's there's a bigger problem, which is, you point out, inherent problems in here, and you pointed out the problems, but I don't see solutions have been really necessarily presented, because this is, as you say, a problem that we face everywhere. You point out also the problems with a lack of public awareness. I totally agree with you on that. People don't know this, and part of the what's going on with any of these three agencies, and that's a bigger problem there too, where you're not getting public input and direction from the public. You're getting people that are just that really know the issue, talking among themselves and not in a broader level. And that really goes back to the whole problem we're facing just in society as a whole. When you had newspapers around and people who were engaged and wanted to read about issues, everybody had the same newspaper, and you flipped on years ago, you had three television stations of news, and you had Walter Cronkite. If some of you know who Walter Cronkite is? I'm just wondering about some of the younger people in here. Anyway, but most of us here know who Walter Cronkite was. But the point is, there was one set of information coming in, and right now, how do you even get information out in public awareness? Everybody goes social media. They listen to what they want to listen to. These are real problems that you're pointing out, Dave. I'm looking for some, how do we get out of this? How do we really reach better into public awareness? I mean, that's a big step right there. And if we can find a solution to that, we found a solution to a whole lot of problems that go beyond just water. But it's a lot of this, you're talking about, there's not shared values and organizational values, and organizations are looking at things through different mandates, but they were designed that way. And it's going to, for them to work together on one issue like CSIP, that's fine. Maybe they could do that, but they're going to have changes in them. But there's just bigger I guess I'm pointing to here, really coming to is the bigger organizational structure here and problem than just CSIP. It's just a structure of the way government operates right now. And I, I really wish we could find a really good solution on it, because you're touching upon an issue that just crosses a lot of boundaries. And there isn't an easy solution. But hopefully we can find one, at least on this particular part.
So Dave, as you know, this tertiary treated recycled water stuff in the grand scheme of things has been around maybe 30 years or so. Certainly from our perspective, only about 30 years. Potable water use of surface water, and for that matter, groundwater, has been around more than 100 years. As a consequence, for the use of potable water, we have lots of laws, lots of engineering rules and procedures. We have agencies with authorities to obtain and distribute potable water to customers and so forth. But that kind of infrastructure of practice and infrastructure of law is pretty new in the use of tertiary treated recycled water for agricultural use. So no surprise we're having some difficulties figuring out how to do this. But if this were, say, a potable water project that we were building today, maybe this agency owned and operated a dam. My understanding of the way in which that would be handled is we would look for a agency or company with the authority and power to run a water distribution system, and we would wholesale water under contract to that company that had the power to operate a distribution system. But here we are trying to sort of mix two agencies doing two functions that are kind of mixed up because this is tertiary treated recycled water. So what are your thoughts on the possibility of, I'm not sure I want to use the word revert, maybe go to a structure where Monterey One Water was simply the creator of the water and the wholesaler, and at our fence line, that's turned over to the County Water Resources Agency or whoever has power to operate a water distribution system appropriately to be that customer, and we simply provide that water under contract conditions. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm going to be candid. While my professional work, I have a very extensive background in applied resource management and particularly water. So the concepts that you're speaking to are not remotely foreign to me. I deal quite a bit of them in various ways. Nonetheless, professionally, and I'm not meaning to dodge the question. I don't really feel like it would be appropriate for me to fully answer your question to the level of detail you're asking. I will, however, say, and this is actually one of the reasons I raised my hand a moment ago in regard to what you said, and then also what Mr. Church had raised. And Mr. Church, I understand your frustration of sort of a statement of a problem rather than a solution. And I know that one slide, the consideration slide, is woefully inadequate. As I noted at the beginning, frankly, I consider developing something of this complexity in a PowerPoint rather woefully inadequate, but that was the sideboards I was required to maintain. On my own notes, I have developed and I have done some initial sharing with the general managers ideas, but it's very complex of how do you go about, from an organizational development perspective, creating a shared governance. How do you, and then and I'm sorry, sir, I don't know the last speaker, but how do you go about finding out and really honing in on where those roles and responsibilities are, where the liabilities associated with those roles and responsibilities are, how you may shift the active responsibilities and operational responsibilities. It's a complex governance exercise, certainly one that's far more complex than can be captured in a PowerPoint. So, Mr. Church, I apologize if what is there is not adequate to sort of dive deeper to the solution setting regarding your frustrations in the last speaker. Again, I think it's less about perhaps making wholesale adjustments to the roles and responsibilities of any particular agency, but rather getting a little more refined and deliberate about and intentional about understanding where those strengths and weaknesses are, understanding where those sideboards of what the respective entities do, and then being more deliberate of defining, again, that shared decision space if you use that Venn diagram model. So regarding that, I think that beyond those titles of those three bullets, I think there is significant work that could be done that is not about problem, but actually solutions. Likewise, creating a focused, cohesive outreach plan. Yes, you're right, Mr. Church, that there's an onslaught of information. It comes from many sources. But this is, again, not uncommon for complex agencies in complex locations to nonetheless develop unified messaging, unified tools. It's all quite doable. You just got to sit down and start developing that structure. So again, to the last speaker, I apologize if I'm seeming evasive, but I don't feel qualified or it's appropriate for me to weigh in on something that would question exactly how your agency does its work. And I apologize if that seems evasive. I don't mean it to be.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I got a short one. Just, I shared the frustration of Glenn and the mayor looking for solutions, but the GSA now has got a newsletter out. And if you haven't looked at it, you need to look at it. They got a great video showing seawater intrusion. So something that we haven't done a good job of educating the public on. And the other thing is, I think the GSA will do a good job on outreach. I've heard the staff comment. They want the public to understand CSIP and the advantages of CSIP and how it's working to stop seawater intrusion. So those are all going to be coming out probably in their own newsletter in the coming short-term future. So there's one solution that Dave is talking about. Get the public to understand CSIP. So the GSA could help on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, may I, well, at a point in time, there was something else that I wanted to speak to that was a little bit to what Mr. Stefani stated and also something else that Mr. Church said. I don't want to get in the way of your board members, however, but.
No, please.
I wanted to speak to the point of this, again, that Mr. Church, you raised the challenge of the multiple regional entities. And while I did not focus, at least initially in my questions, on the concept of regional vision, that came up in a number of questions such that I began asking it more deliberately and looped back to some people to re-ask that question. And while by no means a majority, or I should say actually there was a majority, but not an overwhelming majority, only because I think people were sort of scratching their head and were uncertain. But there were a number of parties that spoke that to this point of what's a role for the GSA, to some of the things that Mr. Stefani was just saying, that in as much as the GSA is acting less so as a direct implementer of projects and more in sort of fostering the work to be done by an implementation by others, which is quite common for GSAs around the state, might I add, that there may be a role that the GSA specifically could play to foster a better regional vision, to sort of act as a convener. And to Mr. Stefani's last point, he is familiar with the work that the GSA is currently doing and recently has done over the last year or so on demand management, another very complex and challenging thing, and means to spread the word and broaden a shared understanding about what demand management is. So there are means to do this in comprehensive community dialogue.
Any questions on this side? I guess I would try to ask a question. I think a theme that I hear both from the presentation and from the comments made from some of my colleagues, this isn't something unique to these relationships, but also generally speaking with these types of shared relationships amongst public agencies. How would you describe, Dave, the context or of where we're at right now as it relates to that conflict? Like, are we seeing an increase of it, or is your assumption based off the interviews that it's relatively the same? One of the things that I think about is like every presidential election. It's like, this is the election. This is the most important election of all time. And it's like, when you're living in the moment, it seems like it's more important than any other point in time. And so I'm just wondering, is it something along those lines, or is there something here that we're finding to be a particular increase in the tension that exists amongst the different agencies?
No, it's a great question. I will say, and again, I think you're going to hear from Paul and R in just a few minutes here, but I would say that the work that they're doing as general managers, and a handful of each of you, and respectively the WRA board in a leadership context, working post audit, has already moved the needle quite beneficially. I think that that's a tremendous beneficial trajectory. I will say that in my professional opinion, and relevant to the three considerations that I listed, because so much of the work that's been done at the leadership level post audit has been, as best as I understand, has been very focused, understandably and rightfully so, on financing and financial factors. My concern for you all is that, and I don't mean to seem like I'm selling those three bullets, okay? I really don't mean it this way, but my concern based on professional experience is that if you end just at sort of the widgets of financial management and don't get into some of these other factors regarding governance and succession and engagement and public awareness, my concern is that 5-10 years from now, you will repeat this same dynamic. All the best efforts done on improving financial accountability and awareness will go into place, but there will still be these other dynamics that will come to haunt you if it's not tackled and addressed in the near future. And likewise, you're building tools for that. To your point about the urgency and, sort of that trope of this is the most important condition of our time. Yes, that's true. I would say that we are at a seminal moment in California water, and I know that that may sound like a trope, but given cost of living, given a whole host of factors, the days of cheap water are over. The pressures that therefore are applied at both the domestic and agricultural water use conditions are increasing rapidly. You see communities both at the ag allied, and domestic level. You see more and more resentment and pushback at the cost of what it takes to deliver and use water. And I think that that's going to continue to get exacerbated. And I think that those pressures are creating a more heightened moment in time right now than perhaps we've faced in the past. So I think that there is a dynamic that does make this a particularly key moment in time regarding things like this, because those pressures are really, really erupting statewide in a number of ways, in my professional observation.
No, I appreciate your response to that. I think one final comment here is another part of your presentation that stuck out to me is that we have a whole bunch of folks representing different interests with different customers, perhaps, but everybody being well-intended and trying to do good. And so I think that's an important thing for all of us to just keep in mind. And I've been seeing that at the table with our leadership discussions that we've been having between the Water Resource Agency and M1W. So I look forward to helping to keep those that good momentum going, and your feedback that you provided, albeit short and to the point. Sometimes short and sweet is good and helps us stay focused on the priorities. And so I think it's going to be important that we incorporate your feedback into the discussions as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comment. For folks on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item? All right, I'm not seeing any takers in the room. I'm not seeing any hands go up on Zoom. So with that, I'll bring it back to the board. Any last minute comments on this one before we move on to the next presentation? Okay, with that, we'll move on to 8B, Monterey County Water. Oh, thank you, Dave. Appreciate you. I'm not sure if you're hanging around with us for this next presentation.
No, I very much would like to hear. I mean, I've heard a version of this presentation, but in fairness, Paul and R, I've heard my presentation, so I want to give them the same level of respect and hear their presentation.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate you. And thank you again for all your expertise in this space. It's been helpful.
It's my pleasure to work with you all. Thank you.
Alrighty, 8B, Monterey County Water Resources Agency and Monterey One Water update on reconciliation process by ARA, Marine Coast Water Resource Agency General Manager, and Paul, M1W Executive Officer. So with that, I'll pass it to Paul to kick us off here.
Thank you, Chair Williamson. we've done this update before, and so we're just trying to get back to the board to tell you where we've been, what we've accomplished, and what we still have to do. I was going to spend most of this time trying to blame everything on Dave Sipos, but since he's still here, we won't do that. So, of course, you
I'm
probably
sorry,
all
you're
remember.
breaking up, Paul.
So, as you probably remember, this started last year, and actually it was Tyler and Tom as our board board reps that met with Mayor Mike LaBar from King City and Matt Simis from the Water Resources Agency. Beginning of this year, with the change in our board, it is now Tyler and Kent. This is focusing on the GPP audit that was performed and trying to work through their recommendations, their long list of recommendations. I think we've talked about this. We don't necessarily agree with all those recommendations. They're not gospel in our opinion, but we are working together and communicating pretty frequently, trying to get through them. Just as a summary, I think we have shown you a table, something like this in the past, which identifies the items and where we're at. And just as a summary of all the items, we have completed 9 of them. Many of those are within the amendment to the agreement that we brought forward to all boards in section 7 and 8 specifically. So 9 are complete. 7 items are in progress, meaning we are actively working on those. And when I say we, it's certainly broad. It is not just R and myself and the respective board members. It's a lot of staff work and a lot of staff time, and I can't overemphasize that. 9 complete, 7 in progress, and 4 we haven't addressed yet. So that's just to say we've accomplished a lot. We've opened a lot of lines of communication, but we still have a fair amount to do. Even after we've addressed all of the recommendations to everyone's satisfaction, we've already put in place within the agreement that meetings will be ongoing to ensure that the communication doesn't fall off, that the leadership group, the board chair, vice chairs of both, will meet on a quarterly basis. There's a monthly meeting at least with our finance teams, obviously our operations teams, as they have for the last 27 years, will meet monthly as well. So there's defining a lot of that communication within the agreement itself. Having said that, I'm going to pass over to R to see if you wanted to say all the smart things about it versus just regurgitating what we've done.
Yeah, no, that's a great summary, Paul. You know, to Dave Sapos' observation about his interviews being a snapshot in time, you know, definitely can feel that as we've sort of been in the continuum. You know, it certainly does have that feel, but at the same time, I think there's you know, a value there as well, and particularly in the areas of, you know, how do we describe what it is so people can understand it more broadly, that you know, that common communication, if you will. I think that's certainly an area that deserves more work, and to the point that, you know, these things aren't going to happen organically. And so, yes, I'm very happy that Amendment 4, that we didn't look just at the finance piece of it in terms of the communication protocols. We have the project managers meeting on a quarterly basis. We're going to keep the LG group, the leadership group, meeting on a quarterly basis. And I think that maintaining that communication is really going to be helpful to us as we move forward. The relationship between Monterey One Water and Water Resources Agency is long, and it's easy to lose sight of how wildly beneficial it has been when we get you know, caught up in things like the GPP audit, where, okay, yeah, there were issues and we could do things better and we're working towards that. But when we zoom back out and we think about, you know, the success that CSIP has been, and, you know, we call it CSIP and it's all of these ancillary parts, right?
and the avoidance of, 400,000 acre feet of groundwater pumping in the 180-400. What would that look like today, absent that project and the partnership that the Resources Agency and Monterey One Water has had over time? And so has it ebbed and flowed? Of course, these things do. And there is room for improvement, and we're actively discussing how to do that. And we have hard conversations in front of us, right? I mean, to Paul's point, we don't want to be Pollyannish here. We've made improvements, we've had successes, but there's a lot of work left to go. And pivoting into those other areas about explaining the project and its impact on a broader basis, because I certainly think that the impact of CSIP extends well beyond the 12,000 acre boundary. And so, expanding that conversation, expanding that awareness, strengthening the partnership, I think is all part of what we need to continue to do going forward. It's just, given the nature of the audit, there were specific issues that we just need to address, and we've prioritized those as best as we can. And I think we're all looking forward to getting out of the forest and into the meadow and thinking about some of these other, bigger issues. And the role of the GSA is a piece of that, right? So, what it's worth.
Ara mentioned something really important. We get down into, as Dave did, as we're doing, we're trying to address the issues, but the broader perspective is there's a recycled water project that has been operating for 27 years, assisting the basin. And if you look over that 27 years, it's really consistent. There's that probably, I actually don't know what it is. It's like 11 to 13,000 acre feet every year has gone out there, which is pretty phenomenal when you look at recycled water projects throughout the state, having that sort of consistency. Having said that, I am a glass half full type guy, which I know is a bad pun when we're talking about water. It's a great project. It's going to continue to be a great project. We're just working on things right now, and we'll continue to. If certainly, we're here to answer any questions you may have about the specifics of what we've worked on, what we've accomplished, what's coming forward. I also know that Mayor Labar would like to speak if possible. He's been part of that leadership group from the get-go. So whatever you would like.
Please, yes.
Thank you, Chair, past Chair, Vice Chair, and Directors. So I wanted to give you my perspective as well. And we also had the CPOS presentation, and I found that valuable because it did highlight things that need to be done. But at the same time, I do want to extend my appreciation to this board because forming the leadership group was one of those key components. While it was based on the audit, I very much appreciated, I think it was you, Chair Williamson, suggested that we make this continue after this, not a one and done, that the quarterly thing was something that's very, very important to keep that line of communication from the policymakers. So we're talking together because there is a lot of work that we need to do. As outlined by the general managers, our specific focus was the financial portions of it. Those amendments were very, very important that laid out those also staff-to-staff lines of communication, made them more effective. And those are the things that will make each of our agencies more effective for the people that we serve. And ultimately, it is for the benefit of all of Monterey County. We do have a lot of hard work before us. Once we get through this multi-year true-up, after that, for me, it gets very positive because that means all of our resources and all of our energy from that point forward is looking at the future. The operational efficiencies, how do we maintain where we're at now and how do we grow? Because we know that we'll need to grow at the same time because water is such an important resource. And that is why I'm so thankful that we have the leadership group in place now, because going forward, in a sense, that is the dual governance program. It's where we can have those very frank conversations and work through that and then have staff start implementing that as we bring it back to both of our boards. So thank you again. because you did give us the time to do this work. I'm sure you would have rather just said, let's just get this done, let's get this over. But this time has been very impactful. And the more time that we spend on it, it is only going to make what we do more effective, more efficient. It'll strengthen our economy here locally. It'll make sure that our growers have a sustainable source of water. These are all benefits that every resident of Monterey County should be proud of. And every one of you should be proud of the work that you're doing as well. So thank you. And if you have any questions, of course, I'll do my best to deflect.
Awesome. Thank you all for the presentation. Open it up for questions, please.
So, Mayor LaBarre, I just want to say thank you very much for your positive response to that suggestion we made, I don't know, more than a year and a half ago to establish this leadership group. Given Mr. Sepos's presentation, I do have a suggestion that might be a very easy lift, but would require the cooperation of your board and our board. And that suggestion would be that we craft a joint resolution that lays out permanently at least the minimum meetings to take place between staff elements and the leadership group, or if you want to go in a different direction and appoint, have the chair appoint one or two directors. Doesn't necessarily have to be the chair and vice chair. They're busy with other things, but whatever, that we put in writing a joint resolution to be approved by both boards to talk about how we're going to work together, at least meeting wise, over CSIP. And that would at least be a start towards Mr. Sepos's sort of joint governance. Wouldn't necessarily need to be the end. So love to hear your thoughts on that.
No, that's an excellent idea, because I do believe through the amendments we did, correct me if I'm wrong, set up the monthly staff communications on the finance side, the quarterly of the technical teams that would meet the month before, and then after that, the month of the leadership group. Codifying those items specifically in a resolution that is signed for by both of our boards would be an excellent first step. And then, while right now our agenda is based on a lot of the audit items, and once we get past the true up, we're going to the operational efficiencies, recognizing that those are actually everything is regarding CSIP. So I think some language in there to just really make it very clear would be easy to do, and I'd be supportive of that. And if you guys aren't, we'll hear about it, right? That seems, having those mutual statements that the public can see, those are the things that build trust very quickly. And those are things that gives us, as we do have changes within the leadership, the next people coming through have a document that says, this is what we're supposed to be doing. And that's how you get the continuity, the succession. I always think that is the next person coming up in a job, but continuity is how I take that, because that is what we're going to have to do, because these agencies aren't going away. In fact, our importance will only grow over time.
Thank you very much. The other suggestion I have is certainly going to be much more symbolic, but might be useful. The way you get to bridge gaps between people who don't know one another very well and maybe have different goals in mind simply because of their positions is, in fact, pretty much to break bread together. So maybe we need to find some way to get both our boards together for a one-off event. Maybe that could be the signing of the joint resolution too, but to involve an opportunity for folks to get to know one another.
I think I'll speak for every elected official. When you bring food to an event, we will be there. But honestly, I think that would be a great idea, because we can structure that fairly easy, get the board members together, do a signing. But it really means, that's why I came here tonight in person and not via Zoom. We have to have discussions. We have to know who we are talking with. And that's how you strengthen things together.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Awesome. All right. With that, we'll go ahead and take it out for public comment. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right. I'm not seeing any. So with that, I'll bring it back to the board. Any last minute comments?
I just want to say thank you both for being here. Means a lot, I think, to everybody that's here to see you guys here and be talking about some of the steps we've been taking. And it's been a pleasure working with you guys at the meetings. So thank you for being here.
Anybody else? I'll echo that I know that this isn't the last time we're going to be doing this, so it's just a step in the process, and I look forward to it continuing. I think it's also important for us to recognize that these inherently create tough conversations, and so there's going to be times where it's harder than others. But the fact that we're willing to continue having those conversations and creating that space for that is the exact solution towards making sure that we don't allow those tensions to boil over and become bigger than they need to be. So appreciate the partnership and look forward to continuing those. All right, with that, we'll move on to 9 consent agenda. 9A is to, oh, no, I'm not going to go through the whole consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on any of the consent items or wish to pull anything? All right, I'm not seeing any takers, so I'll bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move on to committee reports. 10A is Budget Personnel Committee. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We'll take it out to the public. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll go to 10B, Recycled Water Committee minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, go out to the public. Right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move on to 11A. Our first action item is to consider approving and authorizing the executive officer to execute a professional service agreement with Wilden Financial Services for a wastewater rate capacity and comprehensive fee study and allocation plan in the not to exceed amount of $137,180. And with that, I will pass it to Lawrence for a staff presentation.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and member of the board. My name is Ron Shield, Director of Finance with Monterey Water. This evening, I'm presenting the professional service agreement with Wilden Financial Service for wastewater rate study and the cost allocation plan. Next slide, please. The current fiscal year is the last year of a 5-year fluctuating rate increase. To prepare the budget for the next fiscal year, a rate study is required to determine revenue need to fund the operation and maintenance, capital project, debt service, and reserve requirement. The request for proposal was issued on August the 4th, and we received 3 proposals, and we interviewed 3 consultants. They are Bartel Wells and Associate, Ralph Tellners, and Wilden Financial Services. Next slide, please. The evaluation committee includes the executive officer, director of finance, and director of engineering. After evaluating the proposal and interviewing the consultants, Wilden Financial Service was selected based on their experience with water and wastewater study and cost allocation plan in California. Their approach that integrate utility planning, engineering, and finance in their study. They will provide the agency a very robust financial planning model with dashboard and also provide training to the staff. In addition, they have a very strong communication with the client throughout the entire study. Next slide, please. The selection is based on 5 rating criteria. Before considering the fee proposal, the first one is experience on the rate study and the cost allocation plan. The second rating criteria is based on the project staff capacity and the ability to finish the project on time. And the next criteria is the communication, the public engagement, and how they coordinate with M1W and other agencies. Next one is the recommend approach to the rate study and the cost allocation plan. And the last rating criteria is the experience on preparing the Prop 218 notice. The table at the bottom summarizes the fee proposal for the fee consultant. Bartel Wells Associate recommend a $280,000 proposal. Ralph Tellers is $256,000, and Wilden Financial Services $137,000. I want to point out that the fee above does not include the direct mailing, postage, printing, and processing costs associated with the Prop 218 notice, which is estimated at around $100,000. I want to check with the board any question before I move on to the next slide. Okay, next slide, please. And the board of directors, we recommend the board of directors authorize the executive officer to execute a professional service agreement with Wilden Financial Service for the rate study and the cost allocation plan in the amount not to exceed $137,180. With that said, I'm going to turn over to Chris Fisher from Wilden Financial Service to have a high-level overview of their proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Chu. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can hear you.
All right, if the presentation, just a brief presentation we'll go through. Once that's up. All right, good evening, board chair, members of the board and staff. I'm Chris Fisher with Wilden Financial Services, and I'm going to just give a brief overview of our team, our approach, and then available to answer any questions. So here you just see a quick snapshot of the senior level members of the team. We've all been working together for a minimum of 8 years. That's the length of time that Mr. Cronin has been here. We're also supported by a pool of 3 analysts that will provide additional assistance in getting data, verifying it, getting it into models, doing comparisons, and just general analytical tasks, preparation of reports and materials all the way through the process. Next slide, please. So the approach and the methodology for the rate study is really built around 3 questions, answering 3 questions. How much revenue is needed? To do that, we conduct a revenue sufficiency analysis, which becomes sort of the foundational part of the overall financial plan, the projections, and will also be built on to perform the cost of service analysis, which is the next question. Who is incurring the cost? And to do that and to stay in compliance with Proposition 218 and ensure that rates are based on the cost of service, we go through a process of assigning net costs that are incurred by Monterey One to provide service, allocating those out to different customers and customer groups and classes based on their demand characteristics and usage characteristics, all with the goal of ensuring proportionality and equity among those different groups of customers. And then that analysis is used to develop the rates, which answers a third question. What do the rates need to be in order to provide the funding necessary to do all of the things that Monterey One needs to do to provide service to its customers? And so that rate design takes that cost of service analysis and results in rates that are able to generate that revenue and that are based on usage and benefit and proportional costs for each of the groups of customers. Slide, please. And that whole process is really underpinned throughout, from the very beginning through the very end, of constant communication and collaboration. That collaboration is extremely important. We want to be sure from the very beginning that we clearly understand the objectives and the goals of staff and of the policymakers and decision makers. And we accomplish that through meetings and through our written deliverables, through workshops and outreach, with the end goal of arriving at a point where stakeholders and decision makers understand the process, they understand the results, and can accept those confidently, knowing that they were performed with rigor, so that ultimately the decisions that they make can be based on that solid analytical process. Next slide, please. The other component of this project will be the completion of a cost allocation plan. And the purpose of that is to develop an analytically based methodology and model that calculates an allocation of the costs associated with indirect overhead support services, things like administration, information systems, finance, services that Monterey One provides to member agencies. They're on the right side, Monterey Peninsula, Monterey Coast, Marina, and City of Salinas. And that those allocations of those costs to those agencies that result in payments back to Monterey One reflect the cost of those services and the benefits that those agencies receive, and which of course are based on the administrative functions that are provided by Monterey One. Next slide, please. Here's a snapshot of the study or the schedule for the utility rate study, and you see, we will be assuming the contract is approved and we get that executed and get engaged quickly. We'll be starting in October with work going all the way through till June and the public hearing to adopt the new rates, assuming that's done. And so you see kind of an outline of all the tasks with the rate study, capacity and connection fee study, preparation of the reports and the meetings throughout the process there. Next slide, please. This is an overview of the cost allocation study process. You see that wrapping up a little sooner. It's not quite as long a project, not as involved as the rate study, and it's also important that we understand the results of that analysis and that study so that those can be incorporated into the rate study as needed. And I think one more slide. Yeah, just a quick disclaimer, Willdan is a registered municipal advisor and financial advisor. However, we are not acting in that capacity here with Monterey One for this study. We are able to calculate basic debt assumptions for debt payments for planning purposes, to the degree those need to be built into the analysis, but we're not advising on issuance of any debt or structuring of debt or terms or anything like that. So this disclaimer just satisfies our SEC obligations and keeps us out of trouble there. And last slide is just the closing, here to answer any questions or provide any more information that you might need. Thank you again, and look forward to working with you all.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Mr. Fisher, would you mind going back to your slide number 5, please? And it could be,
back up.
there's only so much room on a PowerPoint slide for people to be able to see what you put there. So you may already be aware of this, and just because they're kind of minor issues, you might have left them off. But we also do some billing of wastewater collection fees, just to throw the mayor under the bus, for Pacific Grove, for example. There might be some small. It's been a long day. Why me? At any rate, there may be some small overhead cost allocation that needs to go against those agencies for which we collect those fees and distribute them back to the agency. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for the question. And your first point was correct. The slide's not intended to be all inclusive of all of the functions, but yeah, we certainly understand that there are other functions, and we'll make sure they get their allocation.
Very good. Thank you.
Same slide. Why only just the city of Salinas listed?
So the reason is on this particular item is the cost allocation plan. So how we distribute indirect costs.
Okay.
And with the city of Salinas, like we're doing right now with the treatment of the pond water, and there's a number of other things that we do with the city of Salinas, frankly, that we want to make sure, whether it's City of Salinas, Marina Coast Water District, the Water Management District, and Water Resources Agency, that we have a consistent way of looking at those indirect costs. So we don't have, and I'm making this up, Lawrence can throw something at me, we're charging you guys 12% for indirect costs, and we're charging you 10%, and Water Resources 14%. It's like, let's have a basis that we all can view and contribute to.
So the other cities are picked up under the other.
So the other cities are actually for the billing, and yours is for the billing as well, but that's a separate issue.
Okay.
This is truly for those for Pure Water Monterey, for the agricultural recycling and so
Okay.
on.
All right. And then the other question I have, besides selecting who's going to do the study, um, we're starting to get feedback, and I presume this doesn't launch. This is exactly how the study will be conducted, but we're starting to get feedback that, you know, I noticed the word equitably, and a lot of folks don't like that idea of, you know, per unit. An ADU is the same thing as a household with let's say five or six people in it, that type of thing. So so the idea of actual usage is that, can that be incorporated in the study for evaluation purposes?
Yeah, so based on, we're talking about the rate study itself, we are going to look at different methods, and there's a number of them out there on how to develop our rates. As you well know, certainly since I've been here and well before it, we've had, the largest item is a single family house, and whether it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath or a 10-bedroom, 10-bath, it's the same price.
Right.
And that's something that I've heard over and over. And actually, other places I've worked, we didn't have it that way. So we'll look at things such as fixture unit counts in individual homes or square footage. In terms of actual usage, that is really difficult in our particular area, because getting usage from Cal Water Service versus Cal Am versus Castroville Community Services District, it's not one water purveyor that can provide apples to apples data.
Right.
I just touched on a couple of the rate structures that you can use. There's like I said, there's numerous out there. It's just how granular do we want to get?
Well, with all the money they saved on their bid versus $100,000 lower than everyone else, don't you think that would create a unique opportunity for us to take a look at usage?
Oh, with embedded in there is looking at things. The usage, I'm just saying, practically speaking.
Since Salinas is its own category, it seems like, you know, and frankly, and I don't think this is much of a secret, we do have a lot of density in in a lot of our housing.
Yeah.
So I think it's, you know, it's just something I want to get on the table.
We can certainly look at it. It's just how practical that will be for us.
Right.
And we'll look at it.
Okay, our residents want it to be real practical.
I'll just offer for whatever it's worth. This was something that I raised through the city of Monterey. We wrote a letter to M1W about this very issue and re-looking at our model. So that's very much going to be inherent through this process. And I think that we've taken it, I think the agency has taken it seriously, and considering that now it's going to be up to the board for us to ultimately recommend that, and it'll be going on the Prop 218. So then it'll have to be voted on. But I know it to be true that it'll be part of the process.
Right.
It's embedded in there.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Any other questions, comments at this time? Entertain a motion as well.
Move approval. Second.
So moved and seconded. Any other questions? All right, let's take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? Good evening, sir.
Hi, Peter Zalai, Salinas. So, piggybacking on what's been talked about, the sewer bill is the only one that comes that is not based on usage. So if you do electricity or gas or water or garbage, it's all done by usage. So the more you use, the more you pay, except for Monterey One Water. And so I brought this up a couple years ago. I think you and I talked, and you said there would be a rate study in 26 and that we would look at maybe changing how we're doing this. And so I've heard some different ideas about maybe using number of bathrooms or number of bedrooms, but that's kind of difficult because you might have a family of 6 or so buys a single family home, and over time all the children leave and the father dies and the widow is in the home, and those bedrooms are still there, those bathrooms are still there. And so you need to look at usage. I don't know how you do it. I know that in Salinas we have 2 water companies. And so the easiest way to do it, it would seem to me, would be through the usage of water. somehow marrying the two. In Salinas, we have a huge housing problem, and the single-family homes, many of them are boarding houses. They're tenements. They're no longer single families that are living in there. And so you might have 8, 10, 12 people. Some people are renting a couch. No joke. And so if you have 10, 12 people living next to you, and they're paying half as much as, for example, the 2 adults that are on my property. On my property, we've had 2 adults for the 50 years that we've owned the property. But recently I built an ADU. And so I'm charged 2 accounts, despite the fact there are the same 2 adults. But one of the adults moved into the ADU that's still connected to the main hookup to the street. That is grotesquely unfair. And so I'm here to cheer you on. I'm so happy to see that the rate study is beginning. And I hope that there's going to be some serious look at billing people according to usage. And that's my representative over there, and he's gotten his marching orders several times, so I think he's going to do a great job. Go, Dennis.
I could have thought of it myself, but I appreciated the assist.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Anybody on Zoom? Last call for public comments on this item. All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. I just want to reiterate, I don't think we're at the stage of fully going into this conversation, so there'll definitely be plenty of time to engage deeper here. It's going to be tough to decide which pathway to move forward because there's going to be inherent problems with whatever we do. I know that the vice chair and I were talking to staff about the best way of doing this would be to actually have a meter that measures how much wastewater is coming out of everybody's home. But just think about the investment that would cost each property owner for each unit. So short of that, and even with that, there's actually not a perfect solution. But I feel positive about us moving forward with some other type of model that can create more fairness in the process. So we'll do this last comment and then we'll go to call the question.
Thank you very much, Chair Williamson. Just want to point out a couple of things. So most water companies charge both a fixed amount monthly and then a usage-based amount monthly. And the rationale for that is the fact that a good chunk of the agency's actual costs do not vary whether your users used 0 water or billions of gallons of water. No matter how much wastewater our ratepayers put into Monterey One water or not, I believe that our executive director expects to be paid his salary every year, which is a fixed amount. And the same goes for our director of finance and director of engineering and so forth. So one of the tricky balances in the rate making process is to figure out how much to put in fixed costs to your customers versus how much to put in variable costs. Cal-Am messed this up a few years ago when they had too much in the variable costs. And all of a sudden, those crazy people over on the Monterey Peninsula started conserving water like crazy. And Cal-Am was not getting enough revenue and had to go to the CPUC to get their coffers refilled, so to speak, because their fixed charge was too small. So we are going to have to make a decision about how much of our rates to put in fixed amounts, which have nothing to do with usage, and how much, and by whatever mechanisms are actually doable to try and, at least in some way, shape, or form, get at usage. And I fully understand folks in Salinas having housing that has maybe far more people living in it than the fire department would want, but nonetheless, that's the way it is. So we'll struggle with that in the future, won't we?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I'll go ahead and call the question. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move on to item 11B, consider adoption of resolution number 2025-15, approving the statement of investment policy, delegation of an investment authority to the Director of Finance, Treasurer, and approving the investment strategy and benchmark. With that, I'll pass it back to Lawrence for another staff presentation.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the board. In April 2025, the board approved a professional service agreement with Chandler Asset Management to update the investment policy and manage the investment portfolio. This evening, Chandler Asset Management will present the updated investment policy according to the Government Code 53646. They will also present a very detailed discussion on the investment strategies and benchmark for board consideration. The next action item is to delegate the authority to invest the agency fund to the Director of Finance, Treasury for a period of 1 year. So moving forward, this item will be presented to the board on an annual basis to get the investment policy approved by the board and to delegate the investment authority to the Finance Director, Treasurer. With that, I'm going to turn over to comment of Chandler Asset Management, who will walk us through some of the major changes between the current investment policy and the recommended investment policy.
Thank you, Mr. Chu, and good evening, members of the board. Thank you for having me here to present the recommendations for the updating of the investment policy. We are tasked annually at Chandler as part of our engagement with reviewing the M1 Water investment policy and adding any new or changes or nuances that have been made to California Government Code or Chandler best practices. To kick it off, we certainly did a pretty significant overhaul on the investment policy. And if we can go to the next page. Essentially, the pillars of California Government Code are safety of principal, meeting liquidity needs, and achieving a market return and yield that's commensurate to the current market and the market cycle. We work diligently with the M1 Water's Director of Finance to bring the district's investment policy into the parameters set forth in California Government Code. If we can move on to the next page. The parameters include, first and foremost, changes to scope and prudence. So the scope and prudence would involve, it covers which funds and investments are included and exempt in the policy. As far as prudence is concerned, it also covers the authorized fiduciaries and the prudent mannerism that they take while managing the M1 Water's investable funds. And it also consolidates most cash and reserves for the district to maximize earnings and streamline administration. On to the next slide, please. Again, another parameter that we updated was the risk management and investment objectives. Of course, when we're talking about risk management, it addresses credit risk, of course, through diversification and limits to the investments, to, of course, percentage limits per issuer and required, and it also requires close monitoring and reporting of downgraded securities and parameters set forth to limits maturity durations in accordance with California Government Code. Liquidity is safeguarded by holding at least 6 months of operating expenses and short-term investments. This is delineated within the policy now. And like I just mentioned, maturity caps of 5 years and maintaining a portfolio duration that's within plus or minus 20% of a market benchmark that we had been working with the finance staff to develop and choose. Of course, the investment policy prioritizes preservation of capital, and it maintains sufficient liquidity. Those are the first and second main parameters, of course, set forth in California Government Code. On the next slide, we have authorized investments and performance evaluation. Just revised some of the authorized investments to expand the permitted investments for the sake of diversification, of course, within the parameters of California Government Code. And performance evaluation. The performance will be monitored against the appropriate benchmark, which we have chosen as part of the strategy that we will be using moving forward. So the strategy that we have developed, we generally have parameters set by California government code that have most sector limits of a 5-year maturity. But given the conversations that we have had with the finance staff and the director of finance, we have chosen to recommend a investment program that is bifurcated with short-term funds and long-term funds. The short-term funds will have that sufficient 6-month liquidity, and it will use investment vehicles such as LAIF or other LGIPs, and or treasury bills or different money market vehicles maturing in less than a year. And for the longer term strategy, we will target a longer duration to enhance the diversification and earnings potential of the investable funds. And the securities that will be invested there would be U.S. Treasuries, federal agency, high quality corporates, and pass-through securities. On the next slide. So the strategy that we have determined would most benefit the district would be our Chandler's short-term bond strategy. And what you're looking at here is our short-term bond composite. So all of our clients that are participating in the strategy would be represented here in our composite. And essentially, this takes advantage of the longer term structure of interest rates in this changing dynamic environment with a steepening yield curve. Again, we believe that this will certainly be worth taking advantage of, having that longer duration. And as you can see, the average duration of this 1 to 5 year short-term bond strategy is 2.54 years. And as of March 31st, the yield to maturity on it was 4.16%. And again, the predominant sector allocation would be U.S. Treasuries at over 42%, followed, of course, by U.S. high-quality corporates at 25%, and then agencies at a little over 10%, and then, of course, ABS, CMOs, and supranationals following thereafter in lower delegations. On the next slide, the reason why we chose the longer duration strategy is quite simply because longer duration strategies have outperformed over time. What you're looking at here are 3 different investment indexes that, and the index that we have chosen for M1 Water is the Bank of America, or the ICE B of A 1 to 5 year U.S. Treasury and Agency Index. And if you're looking at the chart, you can see it's indicated there as the last line item in the table. And if we do a 20-year look back of these 3 strategies, whether it be the shorter term strategies, the ICE, or like the 3-month Treasury bill index, the 1 to 3 year shorter duration strategy, and then of course the duration strategy that we have chosen for M1 Water would be the 1 to 5 year. And over the last 20 years, if you look at the growth rate of $50 million, the 1 to 5 year strategy has outperformed the other 2 strategies. And this is essentially what we anticipate would likely continue with the interest rate environment and a steeper yield curve with the dynamic changes that are going on in the Federal Reserve and the dovish monetary policy that we see for the next few years. With that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions about strategies and or the investment policy.
Awesome. Thank you for the presentation, Carl. With that, we'll go ahead and open up for questions to the board.
One quick question. Very beginning, if I can get back to that early page of the red line, second paragraph under A, paragraph A, second paragraph under A, policy. First sentence, you have redlined out the words comply with state and local laws. Will all of this policy comply with state and local laws?
Absolutely. And any omission or anything that we have redlined out of the existing policy was likely from a redundant perspective. We certainly are going to be adhering with the strictest of California government code, local laws, or the strictest of any governing body that we would be under jurisdiction.
I did assume that was probably why you redlined that out, because naturally we should comply with
Absolutely.
federal, state, and local law. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, with that, we'll go ahead and take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for motion and deliberation.
Move approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other comments? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, Carl, for the presentation and all your efforts to support our agency.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. All right, with that, we'll move on to informational items. 12A is to receive fiscal year 2024-2025 grants and funding update.
I think there's an action item C prior to that.
Oh, I apologize. I
Very
got
top,
ahead of
sorry.
myself here. There is an action item C. 11C is to consider adoption of resolution number 2025-16, authorizing an update to the procurement policy solicitation threshold. And with that, I'll pass it to Johanna.
Good evening, members of the board. Johanna Vargas, Grants and Procurements Manager, and I will be presenting this item. Monterey One Water, the Board of Directors last approved updates to the purchasing solicitation threshold limits on June 5th, 2017. These approved limits reflect the law applicable to county sanitation districts. Under these laws, any public works project over $35,000 requires formal bidding. And under these laws, the agency has a flexibility in setting procedures for goods and services and professional services. Next slide, please. For almost 10 years, the agency has maintained the same solicitation limits across the board. We have the same limits for public works, goods and services, and any professional services. These limits are shown on the tables in front of you. Next slide, please. In order to streamline the purchasing and ease the workload, we evaluated the purchasing solicitations limits of other comparable agencies as shown in the table. We find that the current Monterey One Water limits are sort of on the lower end, with 50,000 being the middle range, and the higher end with a 220,000 limit for formal bid solicitations. I would like to note that the 220 range is due to these entities adopting the California Union Public Construction Cost Accounting Act under AB 2249, which allows for higher limits. Monterey One Water has not adopted this code. Next slide, please. After reviewing the results, the staff is proposing the following updates. We would like to divide the solicitation thresholds into two categories. Category 1 is goods and services and professional services, and category 2 is for anything public works. Next slide, please. By splitting the solicitation limits into the two categories, it will allow us to increase the formal solicitation limits for non-public work projects. In addition, in recent years, rising prices and inflation has pushed many essential items over the current limit of $5,000, requiring staff to obtain 3 written quotes instead of 1, and adding a significant workload. The staff is proposing to increase this amount from $5,000 to $10,000. Increasing this will not impact the procurement process. All staff must still provide a quote and ensure that the amount is accounted for in the budget. We will also like to increase the solicitation threshold for formal bidding for category 1 to $50,000. This will result in an estimated 10% decrease of formal bid solicitations. Next slide, please. Staff recommendation is that the Board of Directors adopt a resolution authorizing an update of the procurement policy solicitation thresholds. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Johanna. Any questions from the board? All right, seeing none, we'll take it out to the public for public comment. Any public comment on this item? Looks like we have pretty much all staff here, so bring it back to the board.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And with that, we will now move to 12A, which is to receive fiscal year 2024-25 grant and funding update. And with that, pass back to Johanna.
Okay. At the August board meeting, Rachel and I provided an update on the pre-grant process and the strategies to apply for grants. Today, I'm going to present an update on the post-award grant process and what we call grant management. Currently, the agency, you have the presentation. Okay. Currently, the agency is managing $126 million in grants and loans. We have 4 state grants, 5 federal grants, and 1 federal loan, which is the WIFIA loan. Next slide, please. In state grants, we're managing about $36 million. That's in managing, meaning quarterly, we have to present the quarterly reporting, and file reimbursements request. And we're currently managing grants for the Pure Water Monterey expansion and the co-digestion project. In terms of federal grants, we are managing over $90 million in federal funds. That accounts for 13.5 in federal grants and 76.6 in the WIFIA loan. With this, we provide quarterly and semi-annual reporting, and we file reimbursements request. The WIFIA loan includes the Pure Water Monterey expansion project, and it will continue with the renewable energy project. Next slide, please. Looking ahead in the next 6 months, and with the completion of the Pure Water Monterey expansion project and the co-digestion project, I will be working very closely with the project managers and the granting agencies to close out those grants and provide final reports and coordinate final reimbursements and the final inspection for the projects in order to close out these grants. We also, in the next 6 months, we expect to hear back from grant application that we submitted to the Community Energy Reliability and Resilience Investment Program. If awarded, I'll be working with the California Energy Commission to finalize the award and start implementation of the project. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Please.
So with respect to the 5 federal grants and 1 federal loan, in your opinion, is any of this funding in danger of being curtailed or stopped or delayed as a consequence of what's going on at the federal level?
That's a tricky question. It doesn't seem like it at this moment. I have been able to file all reimbursements, and we have been getting the funding. But again, we are more than likely the government is gonna shut down, so that might delay the reimbursements, getting the reimbursement. But I will still file. I haven't heard anything else from the granting agencies in terms of anything else or funding being in danger or anything like that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right, let's take it out to the public for public comment. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for motion and deliberation. Oh, sorry, this is not,
Yeah, no action.
no action. Any last comments from the board on this one?
Good work on grants. Keep it
Yeah,
up. Thank you.
especially given the environment. So thank you for it. Alrighty, with that, we'll move on to item 13A, report on meeting conference attended at the expense of the agency. And with that, pass it to Nick for his presentation.
Thank you very much. Where do I start? It was an interesting time.
in San Diego, water reuse, California, and I do have a slide that I'm going to put up, but not quite yet. Let me get through the basics here. I want to thank the staff for the in attendance: Tammy, Rachel, Jose, David, and Jaron. So I spent a lot of time with them. That was great. It was wonderful to spend time with them. Did take in maybe 8 to 10 lectures. It was a lot of these things are extremely technical. And so, the operators, they know, they understand it. They're in there. And I was in there and a couple of them going, man, this is very technical, extremely technical. But there were some other ones that were more about, we took in a one about CSIP. And we Sarah Hardgrave gave a lecture on that, and it was very interesting. And looking at funding, and I think what I kind of took away was all the things that they were talking about. Those are all things that we've talked about on the board and through our staff, and these are the things that we've already been doing. So I was very reassured that we're on the right track here, and maybe now is a good time to put up the slide.
Scared.
No.
Uh-oh.
So this is the awards lunch was a Top Gun theme, and so the agency actually was awarded the Recycled Water Agency of the Year large. So that's a huge honor for the agency. And our fearless leader was with us. He was nursing an injury, so Tammy was able to accept the award, and it was kind of cool. So we dressed up a little bit, and it was fun. So anyway, that's how I'll leave it. But I really do appreciate all the efforts of staff and all the great work that you guys are doing and keeping us on the cutting edge. Thank you.
Thank you, Iceman.
In that particular instance, yes.
All right. With that, we'll take it out to the public for public comment. Any public comments on this item? All right. Seeing no, bring it back to the committee. Any last minute comments on this one? Okay. Wow. Here we go. With that, move on to item 14. Let's see if staff can get through this in the next 2 minutes. No pressure.
Great, thank you. So obviously very quick. We've had a number of things going on. One was last Wednesday, we went up to Union Sanitary District. I think I brought this up earlier. Had actually a great morning meeting with their staff, operations, maintenance, engineering. They're finishing up about a $600 million upgrade to their treatment plant. This is phase 1 of 3 phases, so that's $600 million right there. And it was nice to be able to understand some of the challenges of doing that sort of construction project while keeping the treatment plant running and meeting your permit limits and all that sort of stuff. So it was just a good opportunity for our staff to meet their staff and have someone to bounce ideas off of, particularly as we embark upon projects not unlike that. I want to mention that today we had American Water board of directors. I think it was 9 board of directors, and then their executive staff from New Jersey in for a tour. They're out here doing. They looked at the Sand City desal plant. They went to the slant wells and then came and visited us, as well as had a board meeting while they were out here. So it was nice to see that many people from American Water. In the past, we've had groups of 5 or 10, but this was 25 or 30, right? So that was wonderful. On Friday, and Nick talked about what we're doing here and how it's recognized, certainly at a state and national level. I was asked to present at a global water summit in conjunction with the Saudi Water Authority to talk about water recycling in the United States, California, and then use Monterey 1 sort of as a case study on how to scale up and get this sort of stuff done. Before going to Tammy, I'm going to kick it over to Rachel, because the start of having 30 people here today, it's going to escalate for the next couple of weeks. And I don't remember if you said it was 500 or 600 people that you're going to, all of her best friends, coming to visit the treatment plant in the coming weeks.
Yes, thank you, Paul. And I'm actually going to rewind a little bit more. So, in addition to the Water Reuse California Conference, our team was also at the California Stormwater Quality Association Conference. And then leading into Stormwater Awareness Week, we also hosted our first big event was we hosted a training for many of the staff members at your entities that was on construction best management practices for keeping your site operational, especially as rains come. And so we hosted 46 people in person at the regional treatment plant and had another 190 virtual participants. So our largest stormwater related training to date.
Those are all locals.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. Many of your staff were there. So then, as Paul mentioned, I'm going to fast forward to tomorrow when we're going to, well, today we hosted 30 more people with the American Water Tour. Tomorrow, we will host another 40 as the American Planning Association Conference comes into town, and we will showcase the Pure Water Monterey project for them. And then Thursday, we will cut the ribbon on the expansion of Pure Water Monterey. So we're anticipating about 160 people joining us for that event. Hope to see you all there. If you haven't RSVP'd, don't worry because Chai will be reaching out to make sure we know if you're going to be able to join us. Saturday, there's going to be a public event where the public gets to, for the very first time ever, come in and tour the full-scale advanced water purification facility. We're going to have about 175 members of the public on site. They've been registering through an online platform, and we look forward to welcoming them at that time. And then finally, on Monday, we will wrap up with some staff appreciation as we celebrate the expansion with our team who made it possible. So lots going on in the coming days. But yeah, about 600 people we're going to celebrate with or share our facility over the course of these 2 weeks, basically. So thank you.
So I'll be real quick. Here is the award that I was honored to accept on Paul's behalf. Now, keep in mind, Paul was past president of this conference, this reuse group 2 years ago. So I get called 36 hours before I was to get on a plane saying, you have to be me at all my meetings that I've got scheduled, at a workshop that I'm supposed to participate in, etc. So it was kind of interesting. I stopped by his house and got all of the memorabilia that we wore as Top Gun. So thank you for everybody getting us dressed up. We got lots of comments. And keep in mind, this is for the large agency. It's not only for pure water, but it's basically for, I mean, we've over 25 years of reuse water for the ag community and over 5 successful years of AWPF, and we're getting ready to do the expansion. Now, mind you, all the people that Rachel's got coming to our plant, we're still trying to get ready for the ribbon cutting. We're trying to do budget development, which is due to Lawrence tomorrow. So we've been really busy. And I just want to say that everybody that works for Monterey One Water, every department, every entity basically has a piece of this wonderful award because it takes everybody for our agency to be successful. So I was very pleased. I got to hang out with Nick and hang out with all the presidents of all these consultants. And my acceptance speech, I tried to act like we just had won a Grammy or something. You know, I was given 30 seconds. So I basically thanked our board first. So that's all of you guys for
the record.
For the record.
For the record.
I thanked our board. I thanked our partner agencies. I thanked our regulators, our consultants, but more importantly, I thanked the Monterey One Water team that are boots on the ground every day making this happen. And then I went into 25 years of ag reuse and Pure Water Monterey. So I kept it within the 30. I won't say what the previous award, they brought up like half of their board members and introduced them. And I leaned over to Nick. I'm like, Nick, I'm not introducing you. We got 30 seconds and this is what we're going to do. Anyway, so it was a pleasure. I can't fit into Paul's shoes, nor do I want to. It was a lot of work. I basically took this weekend to recuperate. Everybody loves Paul. Paul is everywhere. So anyway, it was a pleasure.
I think that was therapy just then for you, wasn't it? Unloading.
And Timmy, you don't have to say that because he's sitting right next to you, okay? All right, awesome. Thank you, staff. With that, we'll go to item 15, board member comments and reports. Anybody on the board, please?
So earlier this month, I was able to, thanks to Marina Coast funding, attend the annual CSDA conference in Monterey. And there were quite a few presentations that would apply to us. I don't recall if I've sent you my notes yet, Paul.
No.
I'll make sure I do. There was talks on navigating AI and how AI may be affecting our agency. There were talks on cybersecurity and IT strategy. Combating misinformation was an interesting particular session and particularly tricky for government agencies. And we hear a lot of it. People just do not understand a lot of the technical aspects of what we do. There was also an interesting, little bit disturbing piece on ADA compliance of your website. I haven't had a chance to ask our IT folks, is our website completely ADA compliant? Okay, we'll put a raise on that. And then another piece on how social media might be affecting us. So I will provide that report to Paul and he can decide what parts of it to share with the rest of the board. Thank you.
I have one more thing. You noticed that Matt Thompson wasn't here. Well, he is at WEFTEC in Chicago with Nathan Clark, who is our supervisor operations and another operator. And there are like, he said 20,000 people in attendance, which is huge. So anyway, I wanted to let you know that's why they're not here and they're representing our agency in Chicago.
And WEFTEC is WEF, Water Environment Federation. It's their annual conference, and it's just a convergence of, frankly, a bunch of wastewater geeks. And all the technology that's out there shows up. I mean, the exhibit hall has 1,000 exhibitors, which is the primary reason I think Matt and the operators are going as we're developing what our new treatment train is going to look like to be able to interact with people that actually have it all there and see it in person.
Yeah, don't they bring in clarifiers to the exhibit hall?
Not quite clarifiers, but literally pumps that would fill this entire space. Many thousand horsepower pumps into the exhibit hall. It's pretty phenomenal what they bring in.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the update. Anybody else? Oh, God. You said it. 16 public comments on closed session agenda items. There are 2 items on closed session. 17A is public employee performance evaluation, and 17B is conference with legal counsel, significant exposure to litigation. Bring it out to the public for any public comment. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn to closed session.
Oh, God.
It's 9:36. The board is adjourned from closed session. There's no reportable action. Chair Williamson.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Hey, appreciate